My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks ago, my younger sister Carmen stood in front of my entire extended family at our cousin's birthday party and declared that I had never been married, that my claims about having a husband were desperate fantasies, and that everyone should stop enabling my delusions. The room fell silent as 20 pairs of eyes turned to me, some filled with pity, others with confusion. What made this moment particularly devastating was not just the public humiliation, but the fact that my marriage certificate to Daniel Richardson had been filed with the county clerk's office for over 2 years. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I live in a modest two-bedroom house in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, where the desert heat seems to mirror the intensity of family drama that has defined my relationship with Carmen since childhood. The house itself tells the story of my careful, methodical approach to life. Every piece of furniture was purchased after months of research and saving. The small garden in the backyard reflects hours of patient cultivation, much like the relationships I've tried to nurture despite constant challenges. My morning routine begins at 5:30 a.m. when I prepare for my job as a data analyst at a mid-size insurance company downtown. The work is detail-oriented and requires precision, qualities that have served me well in both my professional and personal life. After 8 years with the company, I've earned the respect of my colleagues and a promotion to senior analyst, though the achievement feels hollow when your own family questions the most basic facts of your existence. Daniel and I met 4 years ago at a coffee shop near Arizona State University where he was completing his master's degree in environmental engineering. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours, covering everything from sustainable water management to our shared love of hiking in the Superstition Mountains. He was methodical like me, but in a way that complemented rather than competed with my nature. Where I focused on financial security and long-term planning, he brought creativity and environmental consciousness to our partnership. Our courtship was deliberate and thoughtful. We dated for 18 months before moving in together, another year before getting engaged. The proposal happened during a camping trip to Sedona, with red rocks providing a stunning backdrop as Daniel nervously fumbled with a simple but elegant ring he had saved months to purchase. There were no grand gestures or elaborate productions, just two people who had found genuine compatibility and mutual respect. The wedding took place on a crisp Saturday morning in October 2021 at the Papago Park Desert Botanical Garden. It was a small ceremony with 30 guests, including immediate family and close friends. I wore my grandmother's pearl necklace and a dress I had found at a boutique in Scottsdale after weeks of searching for something that felt authentically me. Daniel wore a navy suit that we had selected together, and his hands shook slightly as we exchanged vows we had written ourselves. Carmen was my maid of honor, a decision I made despite reservations that had been building for years. She seemed genuinely happy that day, helping me with my hair and makeup, holding my bouquet during the ceremony, and giving a toast that brought tears to my eyes. The photographer captured moments of us laughing together, images that now feel like evidence from a different timeline where sisterly love existed without underlying toxicity. My parents, Maria and Carlos Martinez, had immigrated from Guadalajara when I was 3 and Carmen was just 6 months old. They built a small but successful landscaping business through decades of early mornings and weekend work, instilling in both their daughters the importance of hard work and family loyalty. Dad always said that family was everything, that blood connections transcended all other relationships, a philosophy that would later become a weapon used against my judgment and sanity. Growing up, our household operated on traditional values mixed with American ambitions. Mom worked as a seamstress while helping Dad manage the business books, and she expected her daughters to excel academically while maintaining strong family ties. Carmen and I were both good students, but our personalities diverged early. I was the planner, the one who completed homework weeks in advance and maintained detailed calendars of family obligations. Carmen was spontaneous and charming, able to talk her way out of consequences with a smile and a well-timed apology. The dynamic between Carmen and I had always been complicated by a 5-year age gap that placed us in different developmental stages throughout our childhood. When I was learning to drive, she was starting middle school. When I was choosing colleges, she was navigating high school social drama. This gap meant we never competed directly for the same milestones, but it also meant Carmen often felt overshadowed by my achievements, a resentment that she learned to mask with humor and deflection. Carmen's relationship with truth had always been flexible. Small lies about homework completion evolved into elaborate stories about social events that never happened. Our parents often dismissed these fabrications as typical teenage behavior, but I noticed the pattern of Carmen reshaping reality to fit whatever narrative served her immediate needs. She could convince herself so thoroughly of her revised version of events that she seemed genuinely surprised when confronted with contradictory evidence. After high school, I attended Arizona State University on a partial academic scholarship, working part-time at a local bank to cover expenses my parents couldn't afford. Carmen chose to attend community college while living at home, a decision that seemed practical, but allowed her to maintain the comfortable dynamic where our parents managed most of her responsibilities. The arrangement worked for everyone until Carmen dropped out after 2 semesters, claiming the professors were biased against her and the coursework was beneath her intellectual capabilities. My relationship with Daniel developed during Carmen's most turbulent period. She had moved back home after a brief attempt at independence, cycling through jobs and relationships with increasing frequency. Each failure was accompanied by elaborate explanations that placed blame on external circumstances while positioning Carmen as the victim of unfair treatment or impossible expectations. When I introduced Daniel to my family during our 6th-month anniversary dinner, the evening should have been a celebration of new love and future possibilities. Instead, it became a showcase of Carmen's ability to redirect attention to herself through strategic displays of distress. She monopolized conversation with stories about her latest workplace drama, interrupted our attempts to share news about Daniel's upcoming graduation, and ended the evening in tears over a perceived slight from our cousin's recent wedding invitation. Daniel's reaction to that dinner revealed his character in ways I deeply appreciated. Rather than dismissing Carmen as dramatic or attention-seeking, he quietly observed the family dynamic and later asked thoughtful questions about how I navigated such complicated relationships. His approach was analytical rather than judgmental, seeking to understand rather than criticize, a quality that strengthened my conviction that he was the right partner for building a stable, authentic life. The months leading up to our engagement were marked by Carmen's increasing instability. She had started dating Marcus, a man 10 years older, who seemed to encourage her worst impulses while providing financial support that enabled her to avoid facing consequences for her choices. Marcus had his own complicated relationship with truth, having been married twice before without disclosing either divorce to Carmen until months into their relationship. Our engagement announcement was met with genuine excitement from most family members, but Carmen's response felt performative rather than heartfelt. She insisted on helping plan every detail while simultaneously undermining my choices with subtle criticisms disguised as helpful suggestions. The venue was too small, the flowers too simple, the menu too basic for such an important occasion. Each criticism was delivered with the caveat that she only wanted the best for me, making it difficult to address directly without appearing ungrateful for her involvement. Daniel and I had chosen to have a simple ceremony that reflected our values and budget, rather than trying to impress others or meet external expectations. This decision frustrated Carmen, who seemed to view our wedding as a missed opportunity for social advancement or dramatic spectacle. She frequently suggested additions that would have doubled our budget, while insisting that family would help cover costs, promises that never materialized into concrete financial commitments. The wedding day itself proceeded smoothly despite several minor crises that Carmen seemed to attract like a magnet. The flowers arrived an hour late due to a miscommunication she had created with the vendor. Her boyfriend Marcus showed up intoxicated and had to be quietly asked to leave before the ceremony. Despite these disruptions, Daniel and I exchanged vows in front of people we loved, officially beginning our marriage with hope and determination to build something lasting together.
The marriage certificate was filed with Maricopa County 3 days after our wedding, a simple administrative task that Danielle handled while I was recovering from the emotional exhaustion of family wedding drama. Neither of us thought much about the public nature of this filing at the time. Marriage certificates are routine government documents, available to anyone who requests them, but we had no reason to believe anyone would question the basic fact of our legal union. The first incident that should have alerted me to Carmen's escalating issues with my marriage happened 6 months after Daniel and I returned from our honeymoon in Colorado. We were hosting Sunday dinner at our house, a monthly tradition I had established to maintain family connections despite the challenges. Carmen arrived 40 minutes late with Marcus, both of them appearing disheveled and argumentative. When my mother asked about their delay, Carmen launched into an elaborate story about helping a stranded motorist, complete with details about the woman's crying children and grateful husband. Daniel quietly mentioned to me later that he had seen Carmen's car parked outside a casino on his way home from the grocery store just an hour before dinner, a location that would have made her Good Samaritan story geographically impossible. When I gently asked Carmen about the discrepancy, she became defensive and accused me of calling her a liar, turning the conversation into a referendum on my trustworthiness as a sister rather than addressing the obvious inconsistency in her account. This pattern of reality manipulation had deep roots in our childhood, but marriage seemed to intensify Carmen's need to reshape facts to suit her emotional needs. During elementary school, she had convinced our third-grade teacher that I had stolen her lunch money, resulting in a parent conference where my bewildered parents tried to understand why their normally honest daughter would commit such an act. The truth emerged only when our neighbor mentioned seeing Carmen drop her lunch money through a storm drain while playing with friends, but by then the damage to my reputation with that teacher was permanent. In middle school, Carmen's fabrications became more sophisticated and consequential. She told our parents that I had been secretly dating a boy they disapproved of, providing them with detailed accounts of romantic encounters that had never occurred. The boy in question was someone I barely knew, a quiet classmate who was as surprised as I was when my father confronted him at his part-time job at a local restaurant. The humiliation of having my personal life publicly scrutinized based on Carmen's fantasy taught me that my sister's relationship with truth was not just problematic, but actively destructive to my relationships and reputation.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Throughout these incidents, our parents struggled to understand Carmen's motivations, while consistently choosing to believe her explanations rather than confronting the pattern of deception. Their approach was always to minimize the damage rather than address the underlying behavior, a strategy that taught Carmen she could manipulate reality without facing meaningful consequences. When caught in contradictions, she learned to deflect with tears, accusations, or elaborate justifications that painted her as misunderstood rather than dishonest. The dynamic became more complex after Carmen's brief attempt at college. Her failure to complete even one full semester was accompanied by a series of explanations that evolved over time. Initially, she claimed that her professors were incompetent and had graded her unfairly. Later, the story shifted to financial pressures that had forced her to choose between education and helping the family business. Eventually, she settled on a narrative about undiagnosed learning disabilities that had never been properly addressed, despite having performed adequately in high school without any documented learning challenges. Daniel's presence in our family dynamic seemed to trigger something deeper in Carmen's need to control narratives. During our engagement period, she had made several comments to relatives about my relationship that subtly undermined its stability. She would mention to our aunts that Daniel seemed controlling, pointing to his preference for quiet evenings at home as evidence of possessive behavior. She told her cousin Sophia that she worried Daniel was only interested in me for financial stability, despite his own steady income and my modest salary as a data analyst. These comments created an undercurrent of concern among family members who began watching our relationship for signs of the problems Carmen had suggested. When Daniel politely declined to attend every family gathering, preferring to maintain some balance between his own interests and family obligations, Carmen interpreted this as confirmation of her warnings about his
antisocial tendencies. Her ability to plant seeds of doubt while maintaining plausible deniability had been refined over years of practice. The months immediately following our wedding marked the beginning of Carmen's most systematic campaign against the reality of my marriage. She started with subtle questioning that appeared to come from genuine concern. During family gatherings, she would ask Daniel pointed questions about his future plans, his commitment to family traditions, and his understanding of Mexican-American cultural values. These interrogations were framed as protective sister behavior, but they created an atmosphere of suspicion and judgment that made Daniel increasingly uncomfortable at family events. Carmen's boyfriend Marcus became an unwitting accomplice in this campaign. His own unstable relationship history and tendency toward dramatic declarations provided Carmen with a contrast that she used to highlight perceived problems in my marriage. She would frequently compare Daniel's quiet, steady personality unfavorably to Marcus's grand romantic gestures, suggesting that my husband's consistency indicated a lack of passion or genuine feeling. The comparison extended to our living situation and lifestyle choices. Carmen regularly commented that our small house seemed cramped for two people, implying that Daniel was too cheap to provide adequate housing for his wife. She criticized our furniture as boring and our food choices as overly practical, painting a picture of a marriage lacking in excitement or luxury. These observations were delivered as helpful suggestions, but they consistently portrayed my life as somehow diminished or incomplete. Our decision to maintain separate savings accounts while sharing household expenses became another target for Carmen's reality revision. She interpreted this financial arrangement as evidence that Daniel was preparing for divorce, despite the fact that the setup had been my suggestion based on advice from financial planning articles I had read. Carmen's own chaotic financial situation, characterized by overdraft fees and impulsive purchases, somehow qualified her as an expert on healthy money management in her own mind. Carmen's campaign escalated during holiday gatherings where extended family provided larger audiences for her concerns about my marriage. She would wait until Daniel stepped away from conversations to share her observations about his behavior, pointing out moments where he seemed disengaged or uncomfortable as proof of deeper problems. Her timing was strategic, ensuring that her comments reached family members who would then view Daniel's normal introverted tendencies through the lens of her suspicions. The most insidious aspect of her behavior was her ability to make her attacks on my marriage appear as protective concern for my well-being. She frequently told relatives that she worried I was settling for less than I deserved, that my practical nature had led me to choose security over genuine love. These comments were always delivered with expressions of sisterly affection, making it difficult for family members to recognize them as deliberate undermining rather than genuine concern. Our mother became increasingly receptive to Carmen's suggestions, particularly after Carmen began framing her concerns in terms of traditional family values. She would mention to Mom that Daniel seemed reluctant to discuss plans for children, interpreting his measured approach to major life decisions as a sign that he was not fully committed to building a family. Carmen's own relationship with Marcus, despite its obvious instability, was positioned as more passionate and therefore more authentic than my steady partnership with Daniel. The financial strain of Carmen's lifestyle choices created additional opportunities for her to undermine my marriage. When she needed money for rent or car repairs, she would approach our parents with stories about how my marriage had changed me, making me less generous and family-oriented. According to Carmen, my refusal to loan her money demonstrated that Daniel was isolating me from my family and teaching me to prioritize our household over my relatives' needs.
Daniel's attempts to set reasonable boundaries around our involvement in Carmen's financial crises were interpreted as controlling behavior. When he suggested that our monthly family dinners were becoming too stressful due to Carmen's constant drama, she spun this as evidence that he was trying to separate me from my family. His preference for limiting our loans to Carmen was characterized as financial abuse, despite the fact that we had already provided several $1,000s in assistance that had never been repaid. The pattern reached a new level of sophistication when Carmen began documenting what she claimed were concerning changes in my behavior since marriage. She kept mental notes of times when I declined family invitations, forgot to call relatives on their birthdays, or seemed tired during family gatherings. These normal variations in energy and availability were compiled into a narrative of a woman being gradually isolated and controlled by her husband. Carmen's ability to weaponize family loyalty became her most effective tool. She regularly reminded relatives that blood was thicker than water, that marriage was temporary but family was forever, and that my apparent distance from family traditions was a warning sign that required intervention. Her arguments were compelling to family members who had watched me become more independent and focused on my own household rather than constantly available for extended family needs. The escalation culminated in Carmen's decision to position herself as my protector and advocate, despite being the primary source of stress and conflict in my family relationships. She began telling people that she was worried about my mental health, that the pressures of marriage and maintaining a household had overwhelmed my naturally careful personality. This narrative painted Daniel as an inadequate support system, while positioning Carmen as the caring sister trying to help me navigate challenges I was too proud or confused to acknowledge. The breaking point came during what should have been a celebration of family unity and joy. Our cousin Isabella's 30th birthday party was being held at the community center in Tempe, a festive gathering that brought together 3 generations of the Martinez and Herrera families. Isabella had specifically requested a traditional Mexican celebration with mariachi music, authentic food prepared by our aunts, and decorations in bright papel picado that transformed the modest venue into a vibrant fiesta. Daniel and I arrived at the party carrying Isabella's gift, a beautiful hand-painted ceramic vase we had purchased during a weekend trip to Tucson from a local artisan. The vase represented hours of careful selection and consideration, chosen because Isabella had mentioned wanting to start a collection of authentic Mexican pottery. We were both looking forward to an evening of family connection, traditional music, and the kind of celebration that reminded us why maintaining family relationships was worth the occasional complications. The first 3 hours of the party proceeded exactly as planned. Children ran between tables while adults caught up on months of news and shared stories about work, health, and neighborhood changes. Daniel impressed several of my uncles with his knowledge of desert landscaping techniques, a subject that connected directly to their professional interests and demonstrated his genuine effort to find common ground with my family. I felt proud watching him navigate conversations in his improving Spanish, making an effort that most family members appreciated and reciprocated with patience and encouragement. Carmen arrived 2 hours into the celebration with Marcus, both of them already appearing to have been drinking before their arrival. Carmen wore a dress that was slightly too formal for the casual family gathering, complete with jewelry that sparkled under the community center's fluorescent lights. She made a grand entrance, hugging relatives with exaggerated enthusiasm and speaking loudly enough to ensure her presence was immediately noted by everyone in attendance. The evening's tone shifted when Carmen approached the table where Daniel and I were sitting with my parents and Isabella's immediate family. She had clearly been drinking steadily since her arrival, her usual careful control over her public persona beginning to slip in ways that made me increasingly nervous. Marcus had disappeared somewhere, leaving Carmen to navigate social interactions without his moderating influence on her tendency toward dramatic declarations. "Rebecca," Carmen announced, loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear, "I need to talk to you about something important, something I should have said a long time ago." The conversations around us began to quiet as family members sensed the brewing confrontation. Daniel's hand found mine under the table, a steady presence that helped me prepare for whatever Carmen was about to unleash. "Not here, Carmen," I replied quietly, hoping to redirect the conversation to a more private setting. "This is Isabella's celebration. Whatever you want to discuss can wait until tomorrow." My attempt to de-escalate only seemed to fuel Carmen's determination to create a scene that would position her as the center of attention. "No. It cannot wait," Carmen continued, her voice gaining volume and intensity. "I have been watching my sister live in a fantasy for too long, and our family deserves to know the truth." She paused dramatically, ensuring that every conversation in our vicinity had stopped completely. Even the mariachi band seemed to sense the tension, their music becoming background noise to the family drama unfolding. "Carmen," our mother interjected, her voice carrying the warning tone she had used when we were children, and public behavior needed immediate correction. But Carmen had clearly reached a point where family expectations and social conventions no longer held any moderating power over her need to destroy the narrative she could no longer control.
My sister, Rebecca, Carmen announced to the increasingly silent room, has been pretending to be married for over 2 years now. She has convinced all of you that this man, she gestured dramatically toward Daniel, is her husband, when in reality, they are just living together and playing house. I have tried to protect her from the embarrassment of admitting the truth, but I cannot watch our family be deceived any longer. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me struggling to breathe while processing the magnitude of what Carmen had just declared. Daniel's grip on my hand tightened, and I could feel the tension radiating from his body as he processed being publicly characterized as a fraud and deceiver in front of my entire extended family. "Carmen, what are you talking about?" Isabella asked, her birthday celebration now completely derailed by my sister's explosive accusation. "Rebecca and Daniel had a wedding. We were all there. I have pictures from their ceremony." But Carmen had clearly prepared for this line of questioning and had responses ready for any challenges to her narrative. "They had a ceremony," Carmen replied with the confidence of someone who had convinced herself of her own revised version of reality. "But it was not legal. Rebecca has never been able to provide actual proof of marriage because no legal marriage exists. She has been living a lie and dragging all of us into her fantasy because she is ashamed of just cohabiting with someone." The accusation hit like a physical blow, not just because of its public nature, but because of the calculated way Carmen had constructed her attack. She had clearly thought through potential objections and prepared responses that would make her appear concerned rather than malicious. By framing my legal marriage as a desperate fantasy, she positioned herself as the truth-telling sister, trying to save the family from continued deception. "That is absolutely untrue," I managed to say, my voice shaking with a combination of anger and disbelief. "Daniel and I are legally married. We have a marriage certificate filed with Maricopa County. I can provide documentation tomorrow if anyone questions the legitimacy of our marriage." But Carmen was ready for this response as well, having clearly anticipated that I would claim to have legal documentation. "Rebecca has been saying she has proof for 2 years now," Carmen continued, her performance gaining momentum from the shocked attention of our assembled relatives. "But somehow this mysterious marriage certificate never materializes when people ask to see it. She always has excuses about why she cannot produce documentation right away. The truth is that no legal marriage exists because Rebecca is too ashamed to admit she is just living with someone without the commitment of actual marriage." The twisted logic of Carmen's accusation was breathtaking in its sophistication. By claiming that I had been making excuses about producing documentation, she had created a narrative where my perfectly reasonable response about providing proof would appear as another delay tactic rather than a logical solution to her challenge. She had effectively set up a scenario where any defense I offered would seem like further evidence of deception. Daniel stood up slowly, his engineer's mind clearly working through the logical impossibility of Carmen's claims. "Carmen," he said in a voice that carried both authority and restrained anger, "your sister and I filed our marriage certificate with the county clerk's office 3 days after our marriage ceremony. It is a matter of public record that can be verified by anyone with internet access and basic research skills." But Carmen had clearly prepared for Daniel's involvement in defending our marriage as well. "Of course you are going to support Rebecca's story. You benefit from this arrangement just as much as she does. You get to live with someone and have all the benefits of marriage without actually being legally bound to commitment. It is convenient for both of you to maintain this fiction."
The conversation had reached a point where logic and evidence were irrelevant to Carmen's narrative. She had constructed a version of reality where any proof we offered would be dismissed as part of our elaborate deception, making it impossible to address her accusations through normal means of fact-checking or documentation. Her strategy was both brilliant and deeply disturbing in its complete disregard for objective truth. Our father, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke with the weariness of someone who had watched this dynamic play out countless times over the years. "Carmen, mija, you are making very serious accusations about your sister at a family celebration. Do you have any evidence to support these claims, or are we supposed to accept your word against Rebecca and Daniel's?" Carmen's response revealed the depth of her preparation for this confrontation. She stated with confidence, "The evidence is that Rebecca cannot produce a marriage certificate when challenged. Real married people do not have to make excuses about why they cannot immediately prove their legal status. The fact that she keeps promising documentation that never appears is all the evidence we need." The circular logic was maddening. Carmen had created a scenario where my offer to provide documentation was characterized as another excuse, making it impossible to satisfy her challenge through normal means of proof. By demanding immediate production of documents that reasonable people do not carry to birthday parties, she had constructed a trap where any response I offered would be interpreted as further evidence of deception. Isabella, clearly uncomfortable with her birthday party becoming the venue for family warfare, attempted to restore some normalcy to the gathering. "Why don't we table this discussion and focus on celebrating tonight? If there are questions about documentation, they can be resolved privately after the party, when people have access to their paperwork."
But Carmen was not finished with her performance. Having captured the attention of the entire extended family, she seemed determined to maximize the impact of her accusations. "I am tired of protecting Rebecca from the consequences of her choices," she announced with the dramatic flair of someone delivering a climactic monologue. "Our family deserves honesty, and I will not continue enabling her fantasy by pretending that her fake marriage is real." The words "fake marriage" hung in the air like a poison cloud, contaminating every relationship and conversation in the room. I could see confusion and concern on the faces of aunts, uncles, and cousins who were trying to process this unexpected challenge to what they had accepted as a basic fact about my life. Some family members appeared sympathetic to my obvious distress, while others seemed uncertain about which sister to believe in this unprecedented confrontation. The most devastating aspect of Carmen's attack was not just the public humiliation, but the way she had weaponized family loyalty and concern to destroy my credibility. By positioning herself as the protective sister exposing harmful lies, she had made it difficult for family members to dismiss her accusations without appearing to enable deception or ignore potential problems. Daniel and I exchanged glances that communicated our shared understanding that this situation had moved beyond simple family drama into something that required decisive action and clear documentation to resolve. The public nature of Carmen's accusations meant that private conversations and explanations would not be sufficient to repair the damage she had inflicted on my reputation and marriage. The morning after Isabella's birthday party, I woke up with a determination that surprised me with its clarity and intensity. The humiliation of the previous evening had crystallized into something more powerful than anger or hurt, a resolve to understand exactly how deep Carmen's deception campaign had gone, and to gather irrefutable evidence that would expose her systematic manipulation of our family's perception of reality. Daniel had already left for work by the time I called in sick to my job, something I had done perhaps 3 times in 8 years of employment. My supervisor, Janet, could hear the strain in my voice and immediately granted the personal day without requiring detailed explanations. The professional reputation I had built through years of reliable attendance and careful work performance provided me with the flexibility I needed to dedicate an entire day to investigating my sister's web of lies. My first stop was the Maricopa County Clerk's office in downtown Phoenix, an imposing government building where bureaucratic efficiency met the desert heat in an atmosphere of serious civic purpose. The clerk who assisted me,
A middle-aged woman named Patricia, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, listened patiently as I explained my unusual request for multiple certified copies of my marriage certificate and documentation of its original filing date. "This is a bit unusual," Patricia admitted as she accessed the county's database, "but not unheard of. Sometimes people need extra documentation for insurance claims or immigration purposes." She paused, studying her computer screen with professional concentration. Here we are. Rebecca Martinez and Daniel Richardson, married October 9th, 2021, certificate filed October 12th, 2021. Everything appears to be completely in order. The relief of seeing my marriage officially documented in government records was overwhelming. But Patricia's next observation opened an entirely new avenue of investigation that I had not anticipated. "I can see that someone has requested information about this marriage certificate before," she noted, scrolling through additional screens of data. "There have been 3 separate inquiries about this record in the past 18 months. My heart rate increased as I processed this unexpected information. "What kind of inquiries?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the implications of what Patricia had discovered. Who would be requesting information about my marriage certificate, and what type of information were they seeking? Patricia's explanation revealed a systematic pattern of investigation that was shocking and illuminating. The first inquiry had been made 6 months after my wedding, requesting verification that the marriage certificate existed and was properly filed. The second inquiry, made 8 months later, had specifically asked about the legal validity of the ceremony and whether all required procedures had been followed. The most recent inquiry, conducted just 2 months ago, had requested detailed information about the officiant and witnesses. "I cannot tell you who made these requests without a court order," Patricia explained apologetically, "but I can tell you that they all came from the same person, and that person claimed to be conducting family research for genealogical purposes." The euphemism of family research sent chills through me as I realized the extent to which Carmen had been working to find some technicality or loophole that would invalidate my marriage. Armed with certified copies of my marriage certificate and documentation of the mysterious inquiries, I drove directly to the office of Father Miguel Santana, the priest who had officiated our wedding ceremony. Father Santana served at St. Augustine Catholic Church in Scottsdale, where Daniel and I had completed pre-marriage counseling, despite neither of us being particularly religious. We had chosen a Catholic ceremony primarily to honor my parents' wishes and traditions.
Father Santana remembered our wedding clearly, not just because of the careful preparation we had undertaken, but because of an unusual conversation he had experienced several months after our ceremony. "A young woman called the church office multiple times," he told me, his weathered face expressing concern as he recalled the incidents. "She claimed to be your sister and asked very specific questions about the legal requirements for Catholic marriages in Arizona. The questions Carmen had asked revealed a sophisticated understanding of potential vulnerabilities in marriage documentation. She had inquired about whether our marriage was legally valid if Daniel was not Catholic, whether the pre-marriage counseling had been properly completed, and whether any procedural errors during the ceremony could invalidate the legal status of our union. Father Santana had answered her questions professionally, but had found her persistence in line of inquiry troubling. She also asked whether marriages could be annulled retroactively if fraud was discovered," Father Santana continued, his expression growing more serious. "When I asked what type of fraud she was concerned about, she mentioned something about financial deception and questioned whether Daniel had been honest about his employment status during our counseling sessions. This revelation was particularly disturbing because Carmen had no legitimate reason to know anything about Daniel's employment history or our financial situation. Her questions suggested that she had been researching annulment procedures and looking for any possible basis to challenge the validity of our marriage through official church or legal channels. My next stop was the Arizona State University Alumni Office, where Daniel had completed his master's degree program. My instinct proved correct when the registrar, after verifying my identity as Daniel's spouse, confirmed that someone had indeed called several months earlier, claiming to be conducting an employment verification check on Daniel Richardson. The caller had asked detailed questions about his graduation date, degree specialization, and academic performance.
The call seemed legitimate at first, explained the registrar, an efficiency-minded woman named Helen, who clearly took record security seriously. The caller had basic information about Mr. Richardson's enrollment and claimed to represent a potential employer conducting background checks. But some of the questions were unusual for standard employment verification. Carmen had specifically asked whether Daniel's degree was in environmental engineering or a related field, whether he had completed any coursework in water management, and whether his academic performance indicated competence in his chosen profession. These questions revealed that she was building a case to challenge Daniel's qualifications and credibility, possibly planning to claim that he had misrepresented his education to me or my family. The investigation trail led me to Daniel's current employer, Southwest Environmental Solutions, where I arranged to meet with his supervisor during my lunch break. David Chen, Daniel's manager, was initially confused by my visit, but became increasingly concerned as I explained the pattern of harassment and misinformation we had been experiencing from my family member. "Someone did call here about 3 weeks ago," David confirmed, consulting his notes from the conversation. "They claimed to be from a credit reporting agency conducting routine employment verification, but some of the questions were beyond the scope of normal background checks." The caller had asked about Daniel's job stability, his relationship with coworkers, and whether there had been any performance issues or disciplinary actions. Most disturbingly, Carmen had asked whether Daniel's marriage was common knowledge among his colleagues and whether his wife ever visited the office or attended company events. These questions suggested that she was trying to find evidence that our marriage was somehow hidden or secret, possibly to support her narrative that we were not actually legally married. The pattern that emerged from these conversations was both comprehensive and deeply disturbing. Carmen had spent months systematically investigating every aspect of my marriage, from the legal documentation to the religious ceremony to Daniel's professional qualifications. She had approached each inquiry with carefully constructed cover stories that made her requests appear legitimate while gathering information she could use to challenge our credibility. But the most shocking discovery came when I decided to check our home security system footage from the past several months. Daniel and I had installed cameras primarily for package delivery monitoring, but the system also captured activity in our driveway and front yard. Reviewing the footage revealed that Carmen had visited our house multiple times when she knew we would be at work, sometimes staying for 30 to 40 minutes at a time. The timestamp data showed that these visits had become more frequent in the months leading up to Isabella's birthday party, with Carmen appearing to photograph our house, our cars, and even our mailbox. She had also been observed attempting to look through windows and had once been captured apparently trying to determine whether our door was unlocked. The systematic nature of this surveillance was frightening in its implications for our privacy and safety. I decided to check with our neighbors to see whether Carmen's visits had been noticed by anyone else. Mrs. Chen, our elderly neighbor who kept careful watch over the neighborhood during her daily gardening activities, confirmed that she had seen a young woman matching Carmen's description around our house multiple times. She had assumed that Carmen was a relative or friend with legitimate access to the property. She always acted like she belonged there, but something about her behavior seemed off. She would spend a lot of time just standing in your driveway looking at the house, and once I saw her taking pictures with her phone. I thought maybe she was house-sitting or checking on things while you were away.
The revelation that Carmen had been conducting surveillance on her home added a new dimension to her campaign against our marriage. She had not been content with spreading rumors and asking probing questions. She had been actively gathering intelligence about our daily routines, our property, and our lifestyle. The purpose of this surveillance became clearer when I discovered her social media activity from the same time period. Carmen's Instagram and Facebook posts from recent months contained numerous subtle references to concerns about family members who were living lies and pretending to be something they're not. She had posted inspirational quotes about truth and authenticity, with captions that mentioned the importance of protecting loved ones from their own self-deception. To casual observers, these posts appeared to be general philosophical reflections, but in the context of her systematic investigation of my marriage, they revealed a campaign of public preparation for her eventual accusations. The most damaging discovery came when I found that Carmen had been creating detailed documentation of her findings and concerns. Through mutual friends, I learned that she had compiled what she called a family protection file, containing photographs of our house,
printouts of public record searches, and notes about conversations with various officials and institutions. She had been building a case against my marriage with the thoroughness of a private investigator. The scope of Carmen's investigation revealed that her public accusation at Isabella's birthday party had not been an impulsive outburst driven by alcohol and family tensions. It had been the culmination of a months-long campaign to gather evidence that could support her claims about the illegitimacy of my marriage. She had approached the project with systematic determination, exploring every possible avenue to find documentation that would support her narrative. The realization that Carmen had invested so much time and energy in trying to prove that my marriage was fake forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth about the depth of her psychological need to control and manipulate family narratives. This was not simple jealousy or attention-seeking behavior. It was a comprehensive effort to reshape reality according to her emotional needs, regardless of the harm it caused to the people she claimed to love. Armed with evidence of Carmen's systematic investigation and surveillance, I finally understood that defending my marriage would require more than simply producing documentation. I was dealing with someone who had demonstrated a willingness to go to extraordinary lengths to support her false narrative. Someone who would likely dismiss any evidence that contradicted her carefully constructed version of reality. The weight of evidence I had gathered about Carmen's systematic campaign created a clarity of purpose that surprised me with its intensity. After years of trying to maintain family harmony by accommodating her manipulations and deflecting her attacks, I finally understood that the situation required decisive legal and professional intervention. The scope of her surveillance and harassment had crossed lines that demanded formal documentation and expert guidance to address effectively. My first call was to Jennifer Walsh, a family law attorney, whose office was located in a sleek high-rise building in downtown Phoenix. Jennifer specialized in harassment cases and family disputes that involved privacy violations, areas of expertise that aligned perfectly with the evidence I had compiled about Carmen's behavior. Her initial consultation fee was substantial for my budget, but the investment felt necessary to protect my marriage and establish clear legal boundaries around Carmen's intrusions into our private life. Jennifer's conference room overlooked the sprawling desert landscape of Phoenix, providing a sense of perspective that helped me organize my thoughts as I presented the chronological evidence of Carmen's campaign. She listened with professional attention as I detailed the surveillance footage, the documented inquiries to various institutions, and the pattern of harassment that had culminated in the public accusations at Isabella's birthday party. What you're describing constitutes stalking under Arizona law, Jennifer explained, after reviewing the security camera footage and documentation of Carmen's unauthorized visits to our property. The systematic surveillance of your home, combined with her efforts to gather personal information from your husband's employer and educational institutions, creates a pattern of behavior that courts take very seriously. Jennifer's assessment provided validation that my instincts about the severity of Carmen's actions were correct, but her next recommendation surprised me with its comprehensive scope. She suggested documenting every interaction with Carmen going forward, implementing additional security measures at our home, and preparing a formal cease and desist letter that would create a legal paper trail if escalation became necessary. The challenge with family harassment cases, Jennifer continued, is that courts prefer to see evidence that victims have attempted reasonable resolution before seeking legal intervention. We need to document your efforts to address the situation directly while also establishing clear boundaries that your sister will be legally obligated to respect. The process of crafting the cease and desist letter required careful attention to legal language that would be both professional and unambiguous. Jennifer worked with me to document specific instances of harassment, including dates, times, and evidence of Carmen's surveillance activities. The letter demanded that Carmen immediately cease all surveillance of our property, stop making inquiries about our personal and professional lives to third parties, and retract her false statements about the validity of my marriage. While Jennifer prepared the legal documentation, I scheduled an appointment with Mark Rivera, a private investigator who specialized in documenting harassment and privacy violations. Mark's office was located in a nondescript building near the airport, reflecting the discreet nature of his work and his client's need for confidentiality in sensitive family situations. Mark reviewed the security camera footage with professional detachment, pointing out details that I had missed in my initial review. Carmen's behavior on the recordings showed clear signs of deliberate surveillance rather than casual family visits. She had avoided the front door and doorbell, instead moving systematically around the perimeter of our property to observe windows and gather information about our daily routines.
Your sister has been conducting textbook surveillance, Mark explained as he compiled still images from the security footage. The timing of her visits, her behavior patterns, and her apparent efforts to avoid detection indicate that she understood her activities were inappropriate and potentially illegal. This documentation will be valuable if you need to pursue legal remedies. Mark also helped me understand the broader implications of Carmen's investigation into Daniel's professional and educational background. Her inquiries to his employer and university represented potential interference with his career and reputation, violations that could have lasting consequences for his professional standing in the environmental engineering community. The next phase of my preparation involved coordinating with Daniel to ensure our response to Carmen's accusations would be unified and supported by comprehensive documentation. Daniel had initially been inclined toward a more measured approach, hoping that family intervention and clear communication might resolve the situation without legal involvement. However, the evidence of surveillance and systematic harassment convinced him that professional intervention was necessary to protect our privacy and safety. We spent an evening organizing every piece of documentation related to our marriage, from the original certificate to photographs from our wedding ceremony to correspondence with Father Santana about our pre-marriage counseling. Daniel also gathered employment records and educational transcripts that would counter any claims Carmen might make about his professional qualifications or the authenticity of his career achievements. The decision to confront Carmen directly, rather than working through our parents or other family intermediaries, reflected our understanding that this situation required clear communication and formal documentation, rather than the informal family negotiations that had historically enabled her manipulative behavior. Jennifer had advised that any confrontation should be conducted in a controlled environment, with witnesses present and recording equipment to document Carmen's responses to our evidence. I arranged for the confrontation to take place at our parents' house on a Saturday afternoon when extended family members would be present for our monthly gathering. The timing was strategic, ensuring that Carmen's responses to our evidence would be witnessed by the same family members who had heard her accusations at Isabella's birthday party. Daniel and I arrived early to set up recording equipment and organize our documentation for easy reference during the discussion. Our parents initially resisted the formal nature of our approach, preferring to handle family conflicts through private conversations and emotional appeals rather than documentation and legal procedures. However, the security camera footage of Carmen's unauthorized visits to our property convinced them that the situation had escalated beyond normal family disagreements into behavior that required serious intervention. Carmen arrived at the gathering with Marcus, both of them appearing defensive and prepared for confrontation. Carmen's demeanor suggested that she had anticipated this moment and had prepared her own explanations and justifications for the evidence we were likely to present. Her confidence indicated that she still believed her narrative about our fake marriage could withstand scrutiny if she maintained her accusations with sufficient conviction. The formal presentation of evidence began with the certified marriage certificate from Maricopa County, complete with official seals and filing dates that established the legal validity of our union beyond any reasonable doubt. Carmen's initial response was to question the authenticity of the documentation, suggesting that marriage certificates could be forged or that we had somehow manipulated the county records to support our deception. Jennifer had anticipated this line of argument and had prepared additional documentation that would be difficult for Carmen to dismiss. We presented printouts from the county's online database showing our marriage record as it appears to any member of the public conducting a search, along with contact information for the clerk's office where anyone could verify the information independently. Carmen's strategy shifted when confronted with irrefutable documentation of our legal marriage. She began arguing that while we might have obtained a marriage certificate, our relationship was not a genuine marriage because we had married for practical reasons rather than love. This line of argument revealed her desperation to maintain some version of her narrative despite the collapse of her primary accusations.
The security camera footage proved to be the most devastating evidence for Carmen's credibility. The systematic nature of her surveillance activities, combined with the timestamps showing multiple unauthorized visits to our property, created a visual record that was impossible to deny or reinterpret. Carmen's explanation that she had been worried about our safety and had stopped by to check on us was contradicted by her behavior on the recordings. This footage shows that you spent 43 minutes photographing our house and looking through windows, Daniel pointed out with the precision of someone accustomed to analyzing technical data. Your behavior was consistent with surveillance rather than welfare checks, and you made no attempt to contact us or let us know about your concerns for our safety. The documentation of Carmen's inquiries to various institutions created additional problems for her credibility. Father Santana had agreed to provide a written statement about her questions regarding marriage annulment procedures, and the registrar at Arizona State University had documented her employment verification requests that went far beyond standard background check procedures. Carmen's response to this evidence revealed the depth of her psychological investment in maintaining her narrative despite overwhelming contradictory proof. Rather than acknowledging the surveillance and harassment, she attempted to reframe her actions as protective research conducted out of concern for my well-being and safety.
I was trying to verify that Rebecca was not being deceived or manipulated, Carmen explained to our increasingly skeptical family members. If Daniel was lying about his education or employment, she had a right to know the truth before making permanent life decisions based on false information. The circular logic of Carmen's justification was both fascinating and disturbing in its complete disregard for evidence and reason. She had positioned herself as the protector of truth while simultaneously conducting a systematic campaign of harassment and spreading demonstrably false information about the legitimacy of our marriage. Our parents struggled to process the magnitude of evidence documenting Carmen's behavior, particularly the security camera footage that showed clear violations of our privacy and property rights. Our father, who had historically minimized family conflicts in favor of maintaining surface harmony, finally acknowledged that Carmen's actions required serious consequences and professional intervention. The confrontation concluded with the formal presentation of the cease and desist letter, which Carmen was required to acknowledge receipt of in front of witnesses. Her reaction to the legal documentation was a mixture of shock and indignation, as if she could not believe that her actions had consequences serious enough to warrant formal legal intervention. Jennifer had advised that Carmen's response to the cease and desist letter would be crucial for determining next steps. If she continued her harassment activities or made additional false statements about our marriage, we would have documentation of her willful violation of legal boundaries that could support more serious legal remedies. The family gathering concluded with a clear understanding that Carmen's behavior had crossed lines that required formal boundaries and professional oversight. While some family members expressed hope that the confrontation would resolve the situation and restore normal family relationships, the evidence suggested that Carmen's psychological investment in her false narrative ran too deep for simple correction through family intervention. The immediate aftermath of our confrontation with Carmen created ripple effects throughout our extended family that no one had anticipated or prepared for adequately. Within hours of the formal presentation of evidence documenting her surveillance and harassment campaign, family members began processing the implications of what they had witnessed, leading to a series of difficult conversations that would fundamentally alter decades of established relationship dynamics. Our cousin Isabella was among the first to reach out, calling that evening to apologize for how her birthday celebration had become the venue for Carmen's public accusations. Isabella's perspective as both a family member and an outside observer provided valuable insight into how Carmen's behavior had affected others beyond Daniel and me. She revealed that Carmen had been making similar claims about various family members for years, questioning the authenticity of relationships, career achievements, and personal decisions whenever she felt threatened or excluded. Carmen told me 6 months ago that she thought your marriage seemed fake because you and Daniel were too quiet and boring for a real romantic relationship, Isabella explained during our phone conversation.
At the time, I dismissed it as typical Carmen drama, but now I realize she was testing her narrative with different family members to see who would be receptive to her claims. This revelation opened up a broader understanding of Carmen's manipulation tactics that extended far beyond her campaign against my marriage. Isabella shared examples of Carmen questioning whether our cousin Miguel's promotion at his engineering firm was legitimate, whether our Aunt Rosa's recent home purchase was financially responsible, and whether various family relationships were as stable as they appeared. Carmen had created a pattern of undermining other people's achievements and happiness through strategic doubt and misinformation. The impact on our parents was particularly complex and painful to observe. Our father, Carlos, had built his sense of family identity around the idea that blood relationships could overcome any conflict through patience and unconditional love. The documented evidence of Carmen's systematic harassment forced him to confront the reality that love, alone, was not sufficient to address behavior that violated legal and ethical boundaries. "I keep thinking about what I did wrong as a father," he confided to me during a private conversation at his workshop behind the house. "How does a daughter learn to hurt her sister so deliberately? Where did we fail in teaching respect and honesty?" His questions reflected a profound sense of responsibility that was both touching and misplaced, as Carmen's behavior represented choices she had made as an adult rather than failures in her childhood upbringing.
Our mother, Maria, struggled with a different aspect of the situation. Her response combined genuine shock at the extent of Carmen's surveillance activities with a protective instinct that made her want to minimize the severity of the behavior to preserve family unity. She repeatedly suggested that Carmen's actions had been motivated by misguided concern rather than malicious intent, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. "Carmen has always been dramatic and emotional," Mom explained during one of many difficult family conversations. "Maybe she convinced herself that she was protecting you by investigating Daniel's background. Her methods were wrong, but her heart was in the right place." This interpretation required ignoring substantial evidence about the calculated nature of Carmen's campaign and her deliberate efforts to spread false information about our marriage.
The extended family's reaction divided along generational and personal lines that reflected different approaches to conflict resolution and accountability. Older relatives, including our grandmother and several great-aunts, tended to emphasize forgiveness and family unity over individual boundaries and legal protections. They viewed our decision to involve attorneys and formal documentation as unnecessarily harsh and potentially destructive to long-term family relationships. Younger family members, particularly those who had personal experience with Carmen's manipulative behavior, were more supportive of our decision to establish clear boundaries and seek professional intervention. Our cousin Sophia revealed that Carmen had spread rumors about her divorce proceedings 2 years earlier, claiming that Sophia was hiding assets from her ex-husband and manipulating custody arrangements. These revelations established a pattern of behavior that predated her campaign against my marriage by several years. Carmen's relationship with Marcus became another casualty of the confrontation and its aftermath. Marcus had initially supported Carmen's claims about our fake marriage, but the presentation of legal documentation and security camera footage created doubt about other stories Carmen had told him about her family and personal history. Within a week of our family meeting, Marcus moved out of Carmen's apartment, citing concerns about her relationship with truth and reality. The breakup with Marcus triggered a psychological crisis for Carmen that manifested in increasingly erratic behavior and desperate attempts to regain control over family narratives. She began calling relatives at odd hours to provide alternative explanations for the evidence we had presented, claiming that we had somehow manipulated the documentation or coerced witnesses to support false testimony about her actions. Carmen's new explanations became increasingly elaborate and disconnected from observable reality. She claimed that Daniel was part of an elaborate fraud scheme involving fake identity documents and forged educational credentials. She suggested that I had been brainwashed or threatened to support his deception, positioning herself as the only family member brave enough to expose a complex conspiracy designed to fool our relatives. These escalating claims forced family members who had initially been sympathetic to Carmen's explanations to confront the reality that her relationship with the truth was fundamentally compromised. The specific nature of her accusations made them easy to verify or disprove, and several relatives took the initiative to independently confirm Daniel's educational and employment background through their own research. Our uncle Roberto, who worked in construction and had connections throughout the Phoenix business community, made inquiries about Daniel's employer and confirmed that Southwest Environmental Solutions was a legitimate company with an excellent reputation in the field. Roberta's verification of Daniel's professional standing carried significant weight with family members who respected his practical approach to problem solving and his resistance to drama and speculation. The legal consequences of our cease and desist letter began to manifest when Carmen violated its terms within 2 weeks of receiving formal notice. Despite being explicitly warned to cease all surveillance activities and inquiries about our personal lives, she contacted my workplace, claiming to be conducting a family emergency verification and requesting information about my employment status and recent attendance patterns. My supervisor, Janet, immediately contacted me about the suspicious call, recognizing that legitimate family emergencies would not require detailed employment verification from external parties. Carmen's violation of the cease and desist terms provided Jennifer Walsh with grounds to pursue more serious legal remedies, including a formal restraining order that would create criminal penalties for future harassment activities. The restraining order process required additional documentation and court appearances that were time-consuming and emotionally draining, but necessary to establish legal protection from Carmen's ongoing harassment. The court hearing provided an official forum for presenting evidence about her surveillance and stalking behavior, creating a permanent legal record that would protect us from future incidents. Carmen's response to the restraining order was to launch a social media campaign designed to portray herself as the victim of family persecution and legal bullying. She created lengthy Facebook posts describing her efforts to protect a sister who was being deceived by an abusive husband, positioning her surveillance activities as heroic interventions rather than violations of privacy and personal boundaries. The social media campaign backfired when family members and mutual friends began fact-checking Carmen's claims against the evidence that had been presented during our family confrontation. Several people who had initially been sympathetic to her explanations became skeptical when her online narratives contradicted information they had personally verified through independent research. Daniel's response to the ongoing harassment demonstrated the strength and maturity that had initially attracted me to him as a life partner. Rather than allowing Carmen's attacks to create doubt or insecurity in our relationship, he approached the situation with the same analytical problem-solving skills he applied to environmental engineering challenges. He documented every incident, maintained professional relationships despite the stress, and provided unwavering support for my decisions about how to handle the family crisis. The transformation in our own relationship dynamics was one of the unexpected positive outcomes of surviving Carmen's harassment campaign. The experience of defending our marriage against systematic attacks had strengthened our communication skills and deepened our mutual respect and trust. We had learned to function as a unified team under pressure, a capacity that would serve us well in future challenges and life transitions. Our parents began attending family counseling sessions to address the guilt and confusion they felt about Carmen's behavior and their own role in enabling her manipulative patterns. The counseling process helped them understand that accountability and boundaries were expressions of love rather than punishments, a perspective that gradually shifted their approach to family conflict resolution. The counselor, Dr. Sarah Martinez, specialized in family systems therapy and helped our parents recognize how their historical pattern of minimizing Carmen's problematic behavior had inadvertently reinforced her belief that manipulation and deception were acceptable tools for managing family relationships. The therapy sessions provided a framework for establishing healthier communication patterns and more consistent consequences for harmful behavior. Carmen's isolation from family support systems created an opportunity for self-reflection that she had previously avoided through constant drama and crisis creation. Without Marcus to provide financial and emotional support, and with limited family contact due to the restraining order, she was forced to confront the consequences of her choices and develop more authentic coping strategies. The 6 months following our confrontation marked a period of gradual stabilization as family members adjusted to new boundaries and communication patterns. Some relationships were permanently altered by the revelations about Carmen's behavior, while others grew stronger through the process of addressing difficult truths about family dynamics and personal accountability. Our marriage emerged from the crisis with a foundation that had been tested and proven resilient under extreme pressure. The experience had taught us valuable lessons about protecting our relationship from external manipulation while maintaining appropriate connections with family members who respected our boundaries and supported our partnership. 3 years have elapsed since that catastrophic evening at Isabella's birthday party, when Carmen's public declaration about my fake marriage shattered the illusion of manageable family dysfunction. The profound transformation that has unfolded during this period encompasses not merely the resolution of immediate harassment, but a complete reconstruction of how our family understands love, accountability, and the delicate balance between loyalty and personal protection. The most remarkable evolution has been Carmen's metamorphosis from a manipulative family member into someone who has become a powerful advocate for truth and healing. Her journey began with the devastating consequences of violating our restraining order, which culminated in a court appearance that forced her to confront the criminal nature of her surveillance activities. The judge's stern warning about potential jail time if violations continued created the external pressure necessary to break through years of psychological denial and self-justification. Carmen's subsequent decision to relocate to Tucson and accept employment with Arizona Coalition for Domestic Violence Survivors initially appeared to be another manipulation, an attempt to rehabilitation wash her reputation by associating with a worthy cause. However, her supervisor, Maria Elena Rodriguez, has become an unexpected ally in Carmen's transformation, providing both professional guidance and personal mentorship that has sustained genuine behavioral change over an extended period. When Carmen first applied for the position, Maria Elena explained during a recent conversation, I was skeptical about her motivations and qualifications. Her background check revealed the restraining order and harassment charges, which typically would disqualify someone from working with vulnerable populations. However, her interview demonstrated such profound insight into manipulation tactics and victim psychology that I decided to take a calculated risk with extensive supervision and evaluation. The gamble has paid dividends not only for Carmen's personal development, but for the clients she serves. Her unique perspective as someone who has engaged in reality distortion and psychological manipulation provides invaluable insights for helping abuse survivors recognize subtle forms of control that might be invisible to counselors who have never experienced manipulation from the perpetrator's perspective. Carmen's client testimonials, shared with appropriate privacy protections, reveal the depth of her transformation and the authenticity of her commitment to helping others. One survivor wrote, Carmen understood exactly how my ex-husband was using our children and financial concerns to maintain control over my decisions. She helped me see patterns that other counselors missed because she had used similar tactics herself before getting help. This professional success has been paralleled by equally dramatic changes in Carmen's personal life and relationships. She has maintained single status for over 2 years, focusing instead on developing genuine friendships with colleagues and therapy group members who share her commitment to honest communication and personal growth. Her social circle now consists of people who challenge her to maintain healthy behaviors rather than enabling or encouraging dramatic tendencies. Carmen's participation in a specialized therapy group for individuals with narcissistic personality traits has become a cornerstone of her continued progress. The group, facilitated by Dr. Michael Chen at the University of Arizona Psychology Clinic, focuses specifically on helping people with these disorders develop empathy, recognize the impact of their behavior on others, and maintain accountability for ongoing personal growth. Dr. Chen's assessment of Carmen's progress has been cautiously optimistic, while acknowledging the ongoing nature of personality disorder treatment. He explained during a consultation, Carmen demonstrates genuine remorse for her past behavior and has developed significant insight into the psychological mechanisms that drove her manipulation of family members. However, narcissistic traits are deeply ingrained patterns that require lifelong vigilance and continued therapeutic support to prevent relapse. The supervised family meetings that began 6 months after our initial confrontation have evolved into a structured reconciliation process that includes monthly video calls and quarterly in-person visits with specific protocols for maintaining healthy boundaries. These interactions are documented and reviewed with Dr. Thompson to ensure that old patterns do not reemerge and that Carmen's progress remains consistent and authentic. The future of our family relationship hasn't entirely been rewritten, but rather continues to be revised through an ongoing process of adapting to new circumstances and personal growth. The dynamic of our family is different now, out of necessity and by choice, but it is also full of hope for a better future that emanates from the difficult lessons learned from past mistakes and a shared dedication to growth and healing.
The counselor, Dr. Sarah Martinez, specialized in family systems therapy and helped our parents recognize how their historical pattern of minimizing Carmen's problematic behavior had inadvertently reinforced her belief that manipulation and deception were acceptable tools for managing family relationships. The therapy sessions provided a framework for establishing healthier communication patterns and more consistent consequences for harmful behavior. Carmen's isolation from family support systems created an opportunity for self-reflection that she had previously avoided through constant drama and crisis creation. Without Marcus to provide financial and emotional support, and with limited family contact due to the restraining order, she was forced to confront the consequences of her choices and develop more authentic coping strategies. The 6 months following our confrontation marked a period of gradual stabilization as family members adjusted to new boundaries and communication patterns. Some relationships were permanently altered by the revelations about Carmen's behavior, while others grew stronger through the process of addressing difficult truths about family dynamics and personal accountability. Our marriage emerged from the crisis with a foundation that had been tested and proven resilient under extreme pressure. The experience had taught us valuable lessons about protecting our relationship from external manipulation while maintaining appropriate connections with family members who respected our boundaries and supported our partnership. 3 years have elapsed since that catastrophic evening at Isabella's birthday party, when Carmen's public declaration about my fake marriage shattered the illusion of manageable family dysfunction. The profound transformation that has unfolded during this period encompasses not merely the resolution of immediate harassment, but a complete reconstruction of how our family understands love, accountability, and the delicate balance between loyalty and personal protection. The most remarkable evolution has been Carmen's metamorphosis from a manipulative family member into someone who has become a powerful advocate for truth and healing. Her journey began with the devastating consequences of violating our restraining order, which culminated in a court appearance that forced her to confront the criminal nature of her surveillance activities. The judge's stern warning about potential jail time if violations continued created the external pressure necessary to break through years of psychological denial and self-justification. Carmen's subsequent decision to relocate to Tucson and accept employment with Arizona Coalition for Domestic Violence Survivors initially appeared to be another manipulation, an attempt to rehabilitation wash her reputation by associating with a worthy cause. However, her supervisor, Maria Elena Rodriguez, has become an unexpected ally in Carmen's transformation, providing both professional guidance and personal mentorship that has sustained genuine behavioral change over an extended period. When Carmen first applied for the position, Maria Elena explained during a recent conversation, I was skeptical about her motivations and qualifications. Her background check revealed the restraining order and harassment charges, which typically would disqualify someone from working with vulnerable populations. However, her interview demonstrated such profound insight into manipulation tactics and victim psychology that I decided to take a calculated risk with extensive supervision and evaluation. The gamble has paid dividends not only for Carmen's personal development, but for the clients she serves.
Her unique perspective as someone who has engaged in reality distortion and psychological manipulation provides invaluable insights for helping abuse survivors recognize subtle forms of control that might be invisible to counselors who have never experienced manipulation from the perpetrator's perspective. Carmen's client testimonials, shared with appropriate privacy protections, revealed the depth of her transformation and the authenticity of her commitment to helping others. One survivor wrote, "Carmen understood exactly how my ex-husband was using our children and financial concerns to maintain control over my decisions. She helped me see patterns that other counselors missed because she had used similar tactics herself before getting help." This professional success has been paralleled by equally dramatic changes in Carmen's personal life and relationships. She has maintained single status for over 2 years, focusing instead on developing genuine friendships with colleagues and therapy group members who share her commitment to honest communication and personal growth. Her social circle now consists of people who challenge her to maintain healthy behaviors rather than enabling or encouraging dramatic tendencies. Carmen's participation in a specialized therapy group for individuals with narcissistic personality traits has become a cornerstone of her continued progress. The group, facilitated by Dr. Michael Chen at the University of Arizona's Psychology Clinic, focuses specifically on helping people with these disorders develop empathy, recognize the impact of their behavior on others, and maintain accountability for ongoing personal growth. Dr. Chen's assessment of Carmen's progress has been cautiously optimistic while acknowledging the ongoing nature of personality disorder treatment. He explained during a consultation, "Carmen demonstrates genuine remorse for her past behavior and has developed significant insight into the psychological mechanisms that drove her manipulation of family members. However, narcissistic traits are deeply ingrained patterns that require lifelong vigilance and continued therapeutic support to prevent relapse." The supervised family meetings that began 6 months after our initial confrontation have evolved into a structured reconciliation process that includes monthly video calls and quarterly in-person visits with specific protocols for maintaining healthy boundaries. These interactions are documented and reviewed with Dr. Thompson to ensure that old patterns do not reemerge and that Carmen's progress remains consistent and authentic.
During our most recent family meeting, Carmen provided specific examples of how her therapy has changed her approach to relationships and conflict resolution. "When I feel the old urge to control a situation or reshape facts to make myself feel better," she explained, "I have learned to pause and ask myself whether my response is serving truth and connection or just my own anxiety and insecurity." This level of self-awareness represents a dramatic departure from the Carmen who had spent years justifying manipulation as protective concern or family loyalty. Her ability to recognize and interrupt her own problematic thought patterns provides hope that the changes are sustainable, rather than simply temporary compliance with legal and family expectations. Our parents have undergone their own parallel transformation through intensive family therapy and education about enabling behaviors and healthy boundary setting. Dad's evolution from conflict avoidance to direct problem solving has improved not only his relationship with both daughters, but also his effectiveness as a small business owner and community leader. I realized that my attempts to keep peace by avoiding difficult conversations were actually making problems worse, Dad reflected during a recent family dinner. Carmen needed accountability and clear expectations, not endless patience with behavior that was hurting people. My job as a father was to help her learn healthy ways of relating to others, not to protect her from consequences. Mom's journey has been more emotionally challenging, requiring her to reconcile deeply held beliefs about maternal protection with the recognition that true love sometimes requires allowing people to face the consequences of their choices. Her relationship with Carmen has been rebuilt on a foundation of honest communication about expectations and consistent follow-through on stated boundaries. The extended family's adaptation to these changes has revealed how extensively Carmen's manipulation had affected relationships throughout our social network.
Several relatives have shared stories about years of subtle manipulation and reality distortion that they had previously attributed to personality quirks or family dynamics, rather than recognizing as deliberately harmful behavior. Uncle Roberto's perspective has been particularly illuminating. Carmen always had explanations for why things went wrong in her life, he observed, but I never connected the pattern until we saw how systematically she had approached undermining Rebecca's marriage. Looking back, I can see similar patterns in how she talked about other family members' relationships and achievements. The ripple effects of addressing Carmen's behavior have improved family dynamics in ways that extend far beyond resolving the immediate harassment. Holiday gatherings and family celebrations now operate with clear expectations for respectful behavior and structured conflict resolution procedures that prevent small disagreements from escalating into major disruptions. Isabella has documented this transformation in a series of blog posts about family healing and restorative justice that have gained attention from other families dealing with similar challenges. Her perspective, as someone who witnessed both the crisis and the recovery process, has made her a valuable resource for understanding how families can address serious dysfunction while maintaining possibilities for reconciliation when appropriate. The professional consequences for Daniel have continued to unfold in positive directions that neither of us anticipated during the height of the harassment campaign. His promotion to senior project manager has been followed by selection for the firm's executive leadership program, which includes mentorship from company partners and preparation for eventual ownership opportunities. Daniel's reputation for maintaining integrity under pressure has made him a sought-after team leader for high-stakes projects, where client relationships and professional credibility are paramount. His supervisor recently noted that Daniel's experience with conflict resolution and stress management has enhanced his effectiveness in managing complex projects and diverse team dynamics. My own career trajectory has been similarly enhanced by skills developed through navigating Carmen's harassment campaign. The analytical and investigative capabilities I honed while documenting surveillance activities have led to specialization in forensic accounting and fraud investigation that has increased my value to my employer while opening opportunities for consulting work with law enforcement agencies. The emotional intelligence and communication skills developed through family therapy have also enhanced my effectiveness as a mentor and team leader. My supervisor recently assigned me to lead a new initiative focused on workplace conflict resolution and professional communication training, recognizing that my experience with complex interpersonal dynamics has given me practical insights that complement formal education. The legal framework established through our restraining order and subsequent court proceedings has become a model that our attorney, Jennifer Walsh, has adapted for other clients facing family harassment. The comprehensive documentation we compiled and the systematic approach we developed for addressing escalating manipulation have been refined into a template that helps other families navigate similar challenges. Jennifer's presentation of our case at the Arizona Bar Association's annual conference on family law innovations has generated requests for consultation from attorneys across the Southwest who are dealing with harassment cases that fall into the gray area between family conflict and criminal behavior. The legal precedents we established have provided tools for protecting other families from manipulation while maintaining possibilities for reconciliation when appropriate.
The financial investment required to address Carmen's harassment, including legal fees, security systems, therapy costs, and professional consultations, ultimately totaled more than $15,000 over 2 years. While Carmen's restitution payments have covered approximately half of these expenses, the remaining costs represent a significant but worthwhile investment in our long-term security and family stability. The broader social connections we have developed through support groups and online communities for families dealing with manipulation and harassment have created a network of mutual support that extends far beyond our immediate situation. These relationships have revealed that family-based harassment is significantly more common than most people realize, but victims often struggle to find appropriate help because the behavior exists in a legal and social gray area. Our success in addressing the problem through coordinated legal and therapeutic intervention has provided hope and practical guidance for dozens of other families facing similar challenges.
The documentation strategies, professional resources, and boundary setting techniques we developed have been shared through support group presentations and online resources that help other victims recognize and address manipulation more effectively. The preparation for expanding our family through pregnancy and child rearing has required extensive planning around safety protocols and relationship management that might seem excessive to families who have not experienced systematic manipulation. However, these measures represent prudent precautions based on direct experience with how quickly healthy boundaries can be violated when vigilance lapses. Dr. Thompson's ongoing assessment of Carmen's progress includes specific evaluation of her ability to maintain appropriate boundaries with children and respect parental authority without attempting to manipulate family dynamics. The protocols we have established include supervised visits, structured interactions, and immediate intervention procedures if concerning behaviors emerge. Carmen's demonstrated commitment to continued therapy and her professional work with abuse survivors provide realistic hope for maintaining healthy family relationships as our family grows. Her recognition of the need for external accountability and professional support creates safeguards that supplement her internal motivation for maintaining appropriate behavior. The evolution of our marriage through this crisis has strengthened our partnership in ways that continue to reveal themselves as we face new challenges and opportunities. The communication skills we developed for unified decision-making under pressure have enhanced our effectiveness in managing career decisions, financial planning, and relationship management across all areas of our lives. The experience taught us that external validation of our relationship was far less important than our internal commitment to protecting and nurturing our partnership. Carmen's attacks on the legitimacy of our marriage ultimately highlighted the authentic foundation we had built together and our shared capacity for supporting each other through extended adversity. The trust and mutual respect that emerged from successfully defending our relationship against systematic harassment have created confidence in our ability to handle future challenges as a unified team. We have learned that love requires both expression and protection, that healthy relationships need boundaries to flourish, and that shared values become most apparent when they are tested under pressure. For individuals currently facing manipulation, harassment, or reality distortion from family members or others who claim to act from love and concern, the most crucial understanding is that protection of personal boundaries and authentic relationships is not selfish, but essential for everyone's well-being, including the person engaging in problematic behavior. Professional intervention through legal, therapeutic, or both channels provides resources and perspectives that family members cannot offer themselves when dealing with complex psychological manipulation. The investment in expert guidance creates returns in terms of personal safety, relationship protection, and long-term family stability that far exceed immediate costs and disruptions. Comprehensive documentation of concerning behavior becomes essential when dealing with individuals who distort reality or deny their actions when confronted with evidence. Security systems, written records, and third-party verification create objective documentation that cannot be manipulated or reinterpreted to serve alternative narratives. The importance of presenting a unified response between partners when facing external threats to relationships cannot be overstated. Manipulative individuals often attempt to create divisions between partners through appeals to family loyalty, cultural traditions, or emotional obligations that prioritize peace over personal boundaries. Recovery from family trauma requires patience with both the healing process and realistic expectations about the pace of change in all parties involved in repairing damaged relationships. Professional therapy can facilitate remarkable transformations, but sustainable change requires time and consistent commitment from everyone participating in the reconciliation process. Healthy families operate on foundations of mutual respect, honest communication, and individual autonomy, rather than blind loyalty or unconditional accommodation of destructive behavior. True love sometimes demands difficult decisions about boundaries and consequences, that protect everyone involved, including individuals whose actions are causing harm to themselves and others. Setting and maintaining boundaries represents a framework for creating authentic relationships based on respect rather than fear, manipulation, or obligation. Clear expectations and consistent consequences allow people to interact safely while working toward genuine connection and mutual support that serves everyone's long-term interests.
The transformation from public humiliation to current stability has been challenging, but ultimately beneficial for our entire family system. We have discovered that a crisis can become an opportunity for growth when approached with professional guidance, mutual support, and commitment to honest communication about difficult truths that have been avoided or minimized. Looking toward the future, we maintain optimism about continued healing and relationship building while preserving the protective measures that have proven essential for our security and peace of mind. The experience has demonstrated that love and safety can coexist when boundaries are respected and accountability is maintained through appropriate professional and legal support systems. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.